In leading the Pelicans to the largest comeback in team history, CJ McCollum just created multiple problems for the New Orleans Pelicans. I'll tell you what they are in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans at NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here's y'all on this Tuesday, day after the Pelicans beat the Utah Jazz 123-119, coming back from 25 points down, the largest comeback in team history, and it was mainly because of Christian James McCollum, CJ McCollum, and his 45-point performance, getting the Pelicans this victory. And honestly, as cool as it was to come back and beat the Utah Jazz from 25 points down when this team looked lifeless, and we'll talk about CJ's role in all of that, he just created more problems, raised more questions that maybe the Pelicans were even expecting. And we're going to tell you what those are in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Prize Picks. Now's the perfect time to join. Download the app today and use code Locked On NBA for $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's right. You don't even need to win to get the bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. And of course, thank you for making it Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube. And don't forget about the free daily newsletter. You can sign up over at LockedOnDaily.com and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. Let me know in the comments down below if you are an everydayer. So let's get into this game. What a win. What a wild comeback for the Pelicans. 123-119. Take a bow, CJ McCollum. He was awesome in this game. There's no getting around it. CJ McCollum was freaking awesome. You might not like him. Don't matter right now. He was fantastic in this game. 45 points on 18 of 31 shooting. I want you to think about this. 45 points on 31 shot attempts is insanely, insanely good. Only got to the line 4 times. Normally, when you have that kind of efficiency, it's really boosted up by really good free throw numbers. 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 blocks for CJ McCollum in this one, just 2 turnovers. He was awesome. On a night where the starters looked real bad, getting down 25 in this game, CJ was the lone guy that brought it on a night when the Pelicans looked like they were lifeless. They were listless. We'll talk about that in the third segment of WTF happened for the Pelicans to get down by 25 to an actively tanking Utah Jazz team in the first place. But CJ was on a heater, and he's been on a heater recently. 45 points tonight. Don't forget, he had a 50-point game earlier in the year. Earlier this month. He has been leading this team consistently since the Pelicans have started getting better. We talk about the Zion effect, and I think that's a very real thing. We talked about it, the Everydayers know, in yesterday's show. But CJ McCollum is not someone that we should forget about here because he has been flat out awesome for the Pelicans. And there's a reason now that they're 7-3 in their last 10 games. He's been playing. Zion didn't play in this one, out with a non-COVID illness. That type of performance is kind of eye-opening for a number of reasons. And thus it creates the first problem for New Orleans. They're 7-3 in their last 10. We don't want that. Honestly, as much as I like winning and I want him to win, and I want him to get a couple of wins here and there, we went over it in Friday's show or last week's show for the Everydayers. They're not mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, but they may as well be. At this point, they need to go 29-9 the rest of the way just to get 500 and have a chance at the 10th seed, and that might not even get you there. But by winning these games 4 in a row now, they're hurting their draft stock, their draft positioning. That's not great. In my opinion, this is a 4-player draft. Well, they got the 4th worst record right now, so they're still kind of in there, but this is one of those things where, you know, if it goes horribly wrong in the lottery, you could drop to 8. That's not a great position to be in. When they were down 25 points to the Utah Jazz, a Utah Jazz team that's going to actively try and lose, and is a team you're kind of competing with for one of those top draft picks, maybe let them win. I don't know. Maybe let them win. if you can't make the playoffs going forward, finishing just outside that and giving you the worst lottery odds versus better lottery odds is a little bit detrimental to the future of this franchise. At this point, you need to be prioritizing next season, not just having the best record you can this season. We'll talk more about this with Ingram. We'll talk more about this with Willie Green in the future too, but they need to start prioritizing that, and you're starting to see some organizational misalignment here. Ownership wants one thing, David Griffin wants one thing, Willie Green wants another thing, and they're not in line here. There's kinks in that chain of command and all of that, and it's not a great position to be in. CJ is so good that he can get you wins single-handedly like he did in this game. Look, the three-point shooting was awesome. You saw his crafty veteran moves of driving to the basket, finishing with those layups, getting the floaters that he needs. And look, the best play, well, not the best play, but one of the best plays was late in the game where in overtime where he just kicked it. I think I just got the alert that it's like literally snowing in New Orleans when I recorded that. So if you saw me look at my phone, I think it was that. It was when late in the game on almost the game winner, Pels up one, he drives and attacks the basket. It's taken away and he kicks the ball to a wide open Trey Murphy who drains a corner three, and that was the dagger and all she wrote. His play to just look up, find Trey, get him an assist there, and win the game was truly impressive. He was just flat out awesome in this game and brought energy on a night that the Pelicans just did not have it whatsoever until far too late. And they're lucky they were playing the Utah Jazz because otherwise you don't win this game. So you don't need wins, and CJ is going to help you get these wins. Honestly, it's a bit of a problem in my opinion. We'll talk more about the organizational misalignment in my opinion in the future, but it's a massive comeback. Look, it was fun. It was fun. Winning games is fun. And again, it shows you a glimpse against a tanking Utah Jazz team. Take that for what it's worth. But those guys aren't tanking. The players on the court aren't tanking. Isaiah Collier isn't tanking. Keontae George isn't tanking. Walker Kessler sure as heck wasn't tanking. None of those guys are tanking. The organization might be by not playing certain guys, but the players aren't. That's worth keeping in mind when it comes to this. The players never care about that sort of thing. They don't want a high draft pick for the Utah Jazz because they don't want someone to get drafted and then replace them. That's not a great position to be in here. So CJ went out and brought it against a team on a night that nobody else did, and he's been doing this consistently. He's been really, really good. And the first problem is, he's going to probably help this team win too many games, and maybe you don't end up with a top 4 pick. Maybe you finish with the 8th overall pick, whether it's dropping down in the lottery or just kind of being there anyway. Is that ideal? Is that good? I'm posing that it's a bit of a rhetorical question, but I'm posing it to you. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. Do you want them winning games? Do you not? If you say they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs, then what do you want them to do? They're not going 29-9 the rest of the way just to get to 500, and even then you might miss the playoffs. Losing games seems to be in their best interest, and prioritizing the draft seems to be in their best interest. CJ McCollum is going to help them win games. Is that a problem? Is it not? You tell me in the comments down below. So coming up next, he created another problem with the way he's been playing just this whole year, but particularly in 2025. Is he part of the future now? We'll talk about that question coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. If you had taken the the Utah Jazz at +8, that's what they were in this one, and you put $5 down on that, you'd have $300 in bonus bets right now. The FanDuel app is super easy to navigate. There's a variety of bets that can keep every game exciting. The Saints aren't in the playoffs. Make these NFL playoffs more interesting with FanDuel. And when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. So whether you're betting on the Pels, the Saints, your favorite team, or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And now go check out the free daily newsletter for Locked On Pelicans over at lockedondaily.com. One stop for Ultimate Team, but also league coverage too, delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Pelicans newsletter. So let's keep talking about CJ McCollum. We'll get into the comeback win a little bit more and why they were down 25 points in the third segment here, but I want to look at how CJ's recent performances, and particularly this win too, creates multiple problems for the New Orleans Pelicans. Maybe they're not problems. It depends on the angle that you're taking with it, but they're kind of problems in my opinion. We just talked about it's going to help them win games. They won this one in a game that, look, you're competing with that team to lose. And the Utah Jazz just outlost you? Is that a way to put it? So let me pose another question here with how well he's playing, and in particular, how well he's been shooting in January. And three-point shooting is massively important for this team, right? We know that. They took 42 threes in this. They're getting that 40 number plus pretty regularly, even with Zion out there a little bit, which is not something that I really thought that they would be doing. But CJ is playing well. He's facilitating. He's shooting. He's kind of doing everything you really want to see from him. Just playing regularly, all of those things. You know, at this point, after a sluggish start to the year, he'll be above it now, 37.2% from three. He's making over 3 threes per game. That's worth keeping in mind, I think. He's playing really good basketball. For a team that needs shooting around Zion Williamson, are you going to find better than CJ McCollum? Look, his age is a factor. He's 33 years old. And what I mean future is he on the team next season? Is he on the team 2 seasons from now in some capacity? And I think that's a little bit of more of an open question. You know, if someone comes in and makes you an all right offer for CJ McCollum, gets you some tax relief, say for next year or this year, helps you fix some of the salary cap a little bit, would you take it or do you not take it? He's making $30.6 million next season. You could extend him after that, and he won't be making anywhere near that kind of money. So is he part of the future? And if you do keep him, does it then still complicate your books? They're going to be in a bit of a cap crunch again next season with Trey Murphy's extension kicking in. Can you have CJ McCollum on the roster next season? Can you afford to not have him on the roster next season with the type of shooting that he brings, the professionalism that he brings to the team too, just leadership in general? I don't necessarily have the answer to that, but the way he's playing right now, I want him out there alongside Zion Williamson if you're going to win games this season. If that's what they're going to do, look, get these two reps together and build for the future. You can still plan for the future while winning games and hurting your draft position, even if that's not what I would recommend doing. So is he part of the future? And let me kind of tie it into this too. If Brandon Ingram comes back and plays, and somehow plays games for the team the rest of the way. I don't know that he will. We'll talk more about that in tomorrow's show. Does CJ continue to start? You're going to have probably 3-4 starters guaranteed before Ingram comes back. DeJounte Murray's going to be in there. Zion Williamson's going to be in there. Trey Murphy sure as heck better be starting. And then you would imagine they're going to go with a center. So Yves Missi, Daniel, whoever it is, right? A center. Then it's CJ or Ingram. If Ingram's not part of the future, do you actually put CJ on the bench? I don't think you should do that. If you think your starting lineup next season might be Murray, McCollum, Trey, Zion, a center, Missi, shouldn't you be playing those guys this year? You know, can you start CJ and Ingram in some capacity going forward? And I think the answer to that is probably no. They better not take Trey out. We will riot on the show if they take Trey Murphy, the third, out of the starting lineup. So what do you do with that? It's a problem. It's an absolute problem. I struggle to imagine a world where they don't start Brandon Ingram if he's capable of playing for this team or if he wants to play for this team. If Ingram's here, I just don't see a world where he doesn't start, right? Like that's kind of how that feels and figures it would be. So what do you then do? If you're trying to build towards the future and win games, we don't want them to necessarily do that. You still probably need to start CJ, right? But then it gets you, that's going to be your starting lineup this year. Yeah, get it a bunch of run. But then also they're going to win games. And it goes back to what we just talked about in the first segment here. It's hard managing a franchise, y'all. You can hear it with some of the questions that we're talking about here. Like, this isn't easy to figure out and to do, is it? Like, it's difficult trying to kind of put all of this stuff together and figure out what works and what doesn't. And that's where this creates problems for the team. Who starts, right? If you start Ingram, look, I get it. But is CJ then going to be upset if you bring him to the bench with how well he's been playing? Like, the answer to that's probably yeah. Now, he'll do it. He's a professional. He won't complain and all of that stuff. But still, that doesn't seem like it's going to be a great situation for the franchise at all. If Ingram's not part of the future, should you bring him off the bench? But does that then create some issues there too? How do you manage all of this? That's going to be on, Willie Green. It's going to be on the front office to some extent too. But these are the big questions that we have right now. And it kind of goes back to what we just talked about and what we'll look at later in the week, probably on Friday's show, of the organizational misalignment, in my opinion. They all need to get on the same page. There's ways you can do that. There's moves you can make. But you also do want to give Willie Green some autonomy with his roster and just let him be the coach. Otherwise, coaches won't come here in the future if it's like, well, I'm just going to be micromanaged. I'm just kind of like a figurehead because someone in the front office is the coach, really, shadow coach or whatever you want to call it. That's not a great situation for this team to be in. So there are big questions, big problems right now. And look, if CJ was playing bad basketball, yeah, send him to the bench. Who cares? But he's not. He's not. His stellar play, including this massive comeback win and a 45-point night, creates these kind of issues for the team right now. And these are the type of issues that they're going to need to navigate the rest of the way. The other thing is, look, maybe he's upping his trade value. A team like the Houston Rockets feels like they could use CJ McCollum. I was just on WWL TV and WDSU and Fox 8. The only one I didn't do was WGNO. Otherwise, I would have hit for the cycle this weekend. On multiple of those shows, I said, the move they should make is trade CJ. His value might be at an all-time high right now. Can you strike and do that? But if you want to win games, what type of message are you sending to your team if you trade CJ McCollum for parts, let's say, and things that won't help you win and just salary cap relief? And then you let Brandon Ingram walk too, and then two of your big three, even though they've kind of got four guys now. I don't know. It's like a really weird position to be in. And I'm not sure, but if you want to win games next year, CJ's going to help you win games next year when you're healthy and when you can go and conceivably have a much better year than this year. And you can see kind of what this team wanted to be, how they're playing. There's problems with the process. We'll get into that in the next segment here. We're not absolving them of that. We want process over results. And kind of the way we're looking at it right now is results over process, certainly. That's worth keeping in mind here. But CJ McCollum's playing real good basketball. And he's been good his time here in New Orleans, even if he's dealt with injuries and some missed game winners and things like that. But in his 4 years now in New Orleans, 197 games. Think about that number for a minute, right? He's shooting 40% from three on almost 8 attempts per game. He has given you 5.1 assists and 21.2 points per game. He's been really good since he got traded from Portland to New Orleans. So it complicates things. It creates these questions. It creates problems for the team too. And yeah, it's not easy trying to figure out, these answers and what to do here overall, because it's just difficult running a franchise and trying to do all this. Let me know what you think. Is CJ McCollum part of the future, or is he not, in your opinion? He's under contract for next year, so conceivably they could easily re-sign him after that, probably for less money than what he's been making. That could be a good position potentially for New Orleans. He's older, 33. That's a factor into it as well. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. So coming up next, what the frick happened to get down by 25 points to the freaking Utah Jazz, who are playing without maybe their best 4 players? What the heck happened there? Let's break that down, because I can tell you kind of what went wrong. Coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by Prize Picks. With basketball season heating up, there's no better way to get real money action while watching your favorite NBA stars than with Prize Picks. Whether you're a diehard fan or just love some friendly competition, Prize Picks makes it fun and easy to turn your basketball knowledge into cash. So here's how it works. Pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Do you think LeBron James is going to drop 30 points? Maybe Luka is going to get more than 8 assists when he's healthy? Prize Picks lets you make your prediction and put your money where your mouth is in just 60 seconds. Look, if you had taken CJ McCollum more than 24 points in this one, you'd have won. If you took DeJounte Murray more than 8 assists, you also would have won in this one. He had 11 on the night. The team is playing better basketball. These guys are starting to come around. Take advantage of that over at Prize Picks. You can double your money. You can get 1,000 times your cash. And once you win, you can get paid out in as quick as 15 minutes. It's honestly the best way to keep the game exciting. So now's the perfect time to join because all you have to do is download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. No need to win to get the bonus. It's guaranteed. $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup, and that's over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks, run your game. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 11,000 Pelicans fans as well on YouTube. And for your second listen in person, coaching interviews for the New Orleans Saints, you want to go give that a listen over at the Locked On Saints podcast with host Ross Jackson, looking at everything black and gold as they go through the coaching search. It's not going to slow down anytime soon when it comes to the Saints as well. So subscribe wherever you get your podcast. They are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make them your second listen today. So let's wrap up. Still talking about the Pelicans beating the Utah Jazz 123-119 in overtime. 25-point comeback for the franchise, largest in franchise history. But here's the thing. What the heck happened to get down 25 points to the freaking awful Utah Jazz in the first place? Look, the NBA a number of years ago, did some stuff with the Philadelphia 76ers because of the outright tanking that they were doing. And you're witnessing something just as egregious, in my opinion, in Utah. They're going to claim injuries and all that stuff. But look, no Jordan Clarkson, no Larry Markkinen, no John Collins, no Colin Sexton in this game. That's arguably their best 4 players other than maybe Walker Kessler, and he might be the 5th. He could be higher, but you get what I mean. They're without 4 of their 5 best players, if not their 4 best players. And you were down 25 points to them. And it took the Utah Jazz just playing garbage late in the third quarter going into the fourth quarter for this one to go to overtime for you to barely beat that team. I don't swear on the show, but you know what I would be saying there. That's an inexcusable, look, we're happy they won, but it's process over results is how you want to look at things. They got the win. That's cool. But you shouldn't have been down 25 to that team in the first place. The turnovers in the first half, the terrible play in the first half, all of that is just absolutely atrocious, in my opinion. 9 turnovers for the Pelicans in the first half. Now, they cut that down in the second half. That was a big part of why they won. But defensively, they were garbage as well. Their offensive rating was in the mid-80s in the first half. Their defensive rating was in the high 120s. It was like a negative 40 net rating or something like that. That ain't how you're going to win very many games, and you can't do that. Look, this is a better franchise than that. This is a better team than that, even with all the flaws and issues and without Zion Williamson. But the lack of preparation, attention to detail, all of that stuff was really disappointing. One thing you saw Utah do in this game was attack the offensive glass, similar to what the Pelicans did to Utah on Friday. Utah watched film, took some notes, and came out to try and win this game, and New Orleans seemed unprepared for that. I told you in the first segment, these guys that played for them might not be great, but they're not trying to lose. They're not trying to lose, and you've got to be ready for that. And as New Orleans went down 14-0 in this game, playing from a hole all game long till they finally took the lead late in the fourth quarter, is exhausting and not a way that you will beat most teams. Look, this is the only team, the Utah Jazz are the only team where you would have been able to have this comeback from and win the game. And it took a not miracle performance or one-off performance from CJ to do it because he's been doing it consistently, but this isn't how you're going to win very many games, and this is not a sustainable blueprint to follow. The turnovers were lackadaisical, lazy, just stupid, careless things because this team on offense, and look, the bigger issue was definitely defense, but offenses and defenses, I've told you for the everydayers, are connected. When you just run isolation style basketball and no one's moving, no one's in position, it forces you to make some tough passes just to try and get a ball because you got stopped on an isolation play. That leads to an interception, a turnover. That turnover leads to fast break points. I had a couple people ask me like, well, look, you're without Zion. That doesn't excuse you being bad on defense because he doesn't anchor that. One, Zion's been pretty good defensively this year when he's been playing. And two, it doesn't matter if you have all-world defenders, if you're turning the ball over and letting opponents run in transition against you, and that's what the Utah Jazz were doing. They were getting into the fast break, and they were running off of those turnovers. Utah had 20 points off of 12 turnovers for New Orleans in this one. That's not how you're going to win games. They had 18 fast break points. New Orleans had more because Utah just decided they wanted to play crap basketball in the second half of this game. But 18 fast break points is a lot. Don't do that. It's really that simple. Stop turning the ball over. Their shot selection was bad because they were playing bad isolation basketball. It leads to you taking contested mid-range jumpers, and by some miracle, the Pelicans were making those. But that's not a good shot even if it goes in. Work for a better shot. Have ball movement. Things like that give you a good offense. And by the way, I promise you, that will make your defense significantly better. They are connected. Offense and defense are inherently connected in basketball. So by playing the way they did, just looking like the Pelicans, right? Yeah, it's going to lead to some bad things. That's just straight up what happened, what we saw in this game. When they cut down on the turnovers, look at how things changed for this team. When CJ started making shots, that changed things. Look, he missed that mid-range jumper that could have iced it before the Pelicans got an offensive rebound late by Daniel Tice. That was a missed shot because that's not a great shot attempt. That's what we're still seeing from the team. There are still issues here. And then once, this team does lack some resiliency. You saw some of it in the game from CJ McCollum in the second half, but when they get down bad, don't they? And you regularly see that with this franchise. When they get down bad. And that's not a sustainable way to win games. They look like they gave up at a certain point in time. They were playing with zero pride for a long time there till they finally started playing with some. That's what you saw from them here. And that's not a good position for this team at all to try and be in. That is not how you are going to win very many games. They need to clean that up. This is where you look at it and was like, oh yeah, no. They should have lost this game. They absolutely should have lost this game. They didn't, thanks to CJ McCollum, which creates more issues as we've been talking about. But just showed you that they need to do something with this franchise because this shouldn't have happened in the first place. And we've said that so many times, right? It's not that they're losing, it's how they were losing games and how bad they looked in those losses before getting a jolt of energy from Zion coming back and CJ's recent play. There's more than enough talent here to not go down 25 points to a crappy Utah Jazz team. And they still did. And so we need to ask why. Now it was the defense. It was the turnovers on offense, that sort of stuff. So then the question becomes why is your defense bad? Why are you turning the ball over? And that's when you can start to pinpoint the problems. And when we do that, it's, oh yeah, this is stuff we've already talked about. This isn't a surprise to us that they looked like this. I've done this segment before. That needs to be cleaned up. You're not seeing the growth from this team at all when it comes to those things. And relying on, talent and stuff, that will win you a lot of games against the Utah Jazz. But if you played like this, that first half against Boston, you weren't going to win this game. Against the other good teams, look, the Wizards would have beaten this team with the way the Pelicans played until CJ just erupted in the fourth quarter. Simple as that. It's not a good way to get it done. So they need to clean that up because you've got Milwaukee and Giannis coming to town on Wednesday. We'll, of course, break that one down after it happens. I want to look at Brandon Ingram, if he's ever going to play again for this team. I think that's a really interesting discussion. That's what we're planning to talk about in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans, provided we're not all snowed in. We got power, all that. Please stay safe and warm out there. I'm excited to see what it's going to look like. And as always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'll be back with y'all tomorrow.